Please don't ask them for money again, sir. They already gave it. The little black girl's voice did not rise above the music. Yet every glass near the podium seemed to stop trembling at once. Harrison Whitaker lowered his champagne. On the silver tray before him lay a crumpled receipt with a red stamp across it, and 20 feet behind him, smiling from the needs help wall, was the same child in the same faded red dress. 3 hours earlier, the ballroom of the Whitaker Grand Hotel had looked flawless enough to forgive anything. Crystal chandeliers poured warm light over white tablecloths, tall arrangements of lilies, and donors in black tuxedos who spoke softly about compassion while checking stock alerts beneath the table. A string quartet played near the marble staircase, soft and expensive. The air smelled of gardenias, polished wood, and a perfume Harrison did not recognize, sharp and sweet, the kind his late wife Eleanor would have called too loud for a room pretending to care. He stood near the stage, one hand in his pocket, thumb brushing the smooth edge of his wedding ring, though Eleanor had been gone for 4 years. Tonight's gala bore her name. The Eleanor Emergency Housing Fund had been created because she once told him that charity without dignity was just another form of power. Harrison remembered that line every time he signed a donation check, but memory was easier than attention. Attention required looking closely. Across the ballroom, Diane Winslow, the executive director of Hopebridge Children's Fund, adjusted the microphone with perfect calm. Patricia Vale, chairwoman of the gala, stood beside the needs help wall, smiling for photographers as if every framed child's face were a jewel she had purchased. The wall was beautiful in the way something cruel can be beautiful. Soft lighting, gold lettering, tiny stories beneath glossy photographs. Emergency rent, medical transportation, winter coats, temporary housing. Near the center was a picture of a woman and a girl. The girl wore a red dress, one shoulder stitched in white thread that did not match. Under the photo, the caption read, Tiana and Mara Brooks, still waiting for emergency rent. Support. No one in the room noticed the real Mara Brooks standing by the service entrance. She was 9, small for her age, with deep brown skin, neat braids tied back with a red ribbon, and shoes that had been polished so many times the leather had gone thin at the toes. She held a folded paper inside her fist as if it might fly away if she loosened her grip. A busboy brushed past her with a tray of empty flutes, and she stepped aside without complaint. Her eyes never left Harrison. She had seen his face on envelopes on the Hopebridge website, on the letter her mother kept under a cereal box in their kitchen drawer. He was the man everyone said had already helped them. Diane saw Mara first. Not fully, not kindly, but the way a person notices a stain on a white tablecloth. Her smile did not vanish. Tightened. She crossed the edge of the ballroom quickly, heels making no sound on the carpet. "Sweetheart," she whispered, bending just enough to look gentle from far away. "This is not a place for children tonight." Mara looked at the needs help wall, then back at Diane. "My mom works downstairs," she said. "She told me not to lose this." Diane's gaze dropped to the paper. For half a second, something cold moved behind her eyes. Then Harrison stepped onto the stage, and the room turned toward him. Mara moved before anyone could stop her. She walked straight between the round tables, past the diamonds, past the untouched plates of salmon, past a woman who pulled her silk shawl away as if poverty could rub off. At the foot of the podium, Mara placed the crumpled paper onto a passing silver tray and pushed it toward Harrison. "Please don't ask them for money again, sir," she said. "They already gave it." Harrison did not understand at first. He saw only a child where a child should not be, a red dress beneath chandeliers, a room holding its breath because the script had been broken. Diane reached for Mara's shoulder, but Mara stepped back just once. Not afraid, only refusing. Harrison picked up the paper. The red stamp across the center read dispersed. The case number was HB 4179. The recipient name was Tiana Brooks. And at the bottom, beneath the amount of $18,000, the donor line read Whitaker Meridian Charitable Trust. Harrison stared at the donor line longer than anyone expected. It was not the amount that stopped him. $18,000 was a number his foundation moved so often it could disappear inside a quarterly report without changing the color of a graph. It was the neatness of it, the clean official language, the red stamp that said everything had been handled while the child standing before him looked as if her whole life had been folded into that one wrinkled sheet. Diane reached the tray with one careful hand, not grabbing, not panicking, simply smiling the way polished people smile when they are trying to make a problem look smaller than it is. "Mr. Whitaker," she said softly, "I'm sure this is only a clerical delay. These cases can be confusing for families." Mara looked up at her. "My mom isn't confused." The words were quiet, but they landed harder than anger. Around them, the ballroom began to breathe again in whispers. A woman in pearls murmured that someone should call hotel security. A man near table 7 lifted his phone, then lowered it when Patricia Vale gave him a look that felt almost friendly, almost like a warning. Patricia moved to the needs help wall and adjusted the velvet rope in front of it, blocking the center row of photographs with her body as if she were merely fixing the display. But Harrison saw her hand slide toward Mara's picture. Not removing it. Not yet. Just touching the corner as though checking how fast it could come down. "Sweetheart," Diane said, lowering herself beside Mara with a practiced warmth that looked kind from across the room and cold from 3 feet away. "Your mother's case is still pending. That is why her picture is here. We are trying to help you." Mara opened the small pocket sewn into the side of her red dress. Her fingers moved slowly, deliberately, like she had practiced doing this without dropping anything. She pulled out a white envelope, creased down the middle and softened at the edges. The Hopebridge logo was printed in blue at the top. "Then why did this say we didn't finish something?" she asked. Harrison took the envelope before Diane could. Inside was a letter on foundation stationery. "Assistance pending due to incomplete confirmation. Tiana Brooks. Case number HB 4179. The same number, the same family, a different truth." Somewhere near the back of the room, a spoon touched the side of a coffee cup, a tiny ordinary sound that made the silence feel even wider. Harrison did not raise his voice. He did not accuse anyone. He only folded the receipt beside the letter and looked from one to the other. "Who sends these notices?" he asked. Diane's smile held, but her eyes moved first to Patricia, then to the wall, then to the receipt. "Our family relations office," she said. "It is standard procedure." Mara shook her head. "A lady called after that letter. She said if Mama kept asking, our picture would come down." Diane's expression changed so slightly most people missed it. Harrison did not. He watched her right thumb slide over the case number on the receipt, covering it as naturally as if she were smoothing the paper. "Do you remember the lady's name?" he asked Mara. Mara looked at the wall, at her own photograph trapped under warm lights, then back at him. "No," she said, "but I remember her voice." Patricia laughed once, soft and brittle. "Children remember feelings, Mr. Whitaker, not facts." Mara turned toward her. "I remember dates too." Harrison looked down again, and this time the chill reached him before the meaning did. The pending letter was dated 2 days after the money had supposedly been released. The date sat there like a small piece of ice. Harrison read it once, then again, his face giving away almost nothing except the slight tightening at the corner of his jaw. The receipt said the funds had been disbursed on March 12th. The pending letter, printed on the same foundation letterhead, was dated March 14th. 2 days later, Hopebridge had told Tiana Brooks her assistants could not move forward because she had not confirmed completion. Behind Harrison, the quartet had stopped playing without anyone telling them to. The silence left the room exposed. Diane reached for the letter with a gentle sigh, the kind adults use when they want a child to feel foolish without saying the word. "There are automated notices," she explained. "Sometimes mail goes out after a case has already been updated. It happens." Mara looked at the letter, then at the receipt. "Not this one." Harrison turned to her. "Why not?" She swallowed, and for the first time her hand trembled, but she did not step back. From the pocket of her dress, she pulled out a folded copy of a rental form, its corners worn soft from being carried too long. "Mama made me keep this because it had her real signature," she said. "She said if anybody asked, I should show the one with the heart." Diane's eyes flicked toward the paper too quickly. Caleb Monroe, Harrison's attorney, who had been standing just off stage with a phone already open, stepped closer. Harrison handed him the receipt and the rental form. Caleb held them under the warm spill of the podium light. The ballroom watched as if the comparison itself were a performance no one had paid to see. On the rental form, Tiana Brooks had signed her name in careful blue ink, the capital B curling inward at the top, almost like half a heart. On the receipt, beneath a line that read beneficiary confirmation received, the signature was flat, fast, and black, the B sharp as a hook. "My mom writes slow," Mara said. "She presses hard when she gets nervous. That one looks like somebody was in a hurry." No one laughed. No one whispered. Even Patricia Vale stopped touching the edge of the needs help wall. Caleb took a photograph of both signatures, then another of the case number. Diane's voice softened, but the softness had lost its warmth. "Mara, honey, these documents are internal. You could get your mother in trouble by carrying things you don't understand." Mara looked at her then, not defiant, not dramatic, simply tired in a way no 9-year-old should have learned. She already got in trouble for asking where the money went. Harrison's thumb moved over the receipt, stopping at the confirmation line. He still did not accuse Diane. He did not need to. He only asked, very quietly, who approved beneficiary confirmations after hours. Diane opened her mouth, then closed it. Her phone buzzed once in her hand. She turned the screen down. Before anyone could see it, but Caleb had already noticed the notification banner. Family Relations Access Log updated. Harrison looked from the phone to the forged signature, and the room seemed to grow colder around the flowers, the candles, and the gold-framed photographs. The first receipt had not been a mistake. Someone had just tried to change the trail while they were standing there. Harrison's eyes moved to Diane's phone, but before he could speak, 2 men in navy suits stepped quietly between Mara and the podium. They did not touch her. They did not need to. Their bodies alone made a wall, broad shoulders, coiled earpieces, polished shoes planted on the pale carpet as if the child in the red dress were a disturbance to be managed rather than a person to be heard. One of them lowered his voice with professional calm. "Young lady, we're going to step into the lobby now, all right?" Mara looked past him at the receipt in Harrison's hand. "That belongs with him," she said. "I'm not taking it back." A ripple moved through the donors. Not outrage, exactly, but discomfort dressed up as manners. Patricia Vale came forward with a glassy smile, one hand pressed to her diamond necklace. "Mr. Whitaker, this is becoming inappropriate for the room. There are privacy concerns. A child's family information is being discussed in public. Surely we all agree she deserves protection." The word protection sounded soft, but in Patricia's mouth it meant removal. A board member with silver hair nodded gravely from table 3. "Diane is right to be careful. These situations can spiral when people misunderstand assistance systems." Mara stood smaller beneath the chandeliers than she had at the service entrance. The ceiling seemed too high above her, the floral arrangements taller than her shoulders, the gold-framed photographs glowing behind her like proof that rich people knew how to care better than poor people knew how to explain pain. Harrison saw it then, not the whole thing, not yet, but enough. Every adult in the room had found a polite reason to make the child disappear. Diane stepped closer, lowering her voice so only Harrison, Mara, and Caleb could hear. "Her mother works in this hotel, Mr. Whitaker. If this becomes a scene, it could affect employment, housing support, future eligibility. I'm only thinking of the family." Mara's fingers tightened around the white envelope. Her face did not crumple. Her eyes did not fill. She simply looked up at Diane and said, "You said that downstairs too." The sentence cut through the air so cleanly that even the security guard shifted his weight. Diane blinked once.
"I'm sorry."
"You said if Mama stayed quiet, we could stay visible." Patricia gave a small laugh, too quick to be elegant. "Children repeat things out of context." Harrison turned slightly toward Caleb. He did not raise his hand. He did not give a dramatic order. He only said, "Find out where Mrs. Brooks is." Diane's smile returned, but thinner now. "She's probably finishing her shift. I can have someone from staff locate her after the program." "Now," Harrison said. One word. Not loud but final. For the first time, the ballroom no longer belonged entirely to Diane. Still, she recovered with the skill of someone who had survived many rooms like this. She took the microphone from the stand and faced the donors. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. We are addressing a private family matter with care and discretion. Please return to your seats." The words worked. Chairs moved. Napkins settled. A waiter resumed pouring water. The rich room accepted the explanation because it sounded responsible. Diane looked almost relieved as the security men opened a path toward the side hallway, guiding the problem away from the cameras. But as she turned, her phone lit up again on the dark face of the podium. Harrison saw the notification before she snatched it down. HB 4179 status changed to withdrawn at family request. Harrison did not move when the notification vanished from Diane's screen. He only kept his eyes on the place where the words had been, as if the dark glass could still confess. Withdrawn at family request. The phrase sounded harmless, almost merciful, the kind of language that could make disappearance look voluntary. Diane slipped the phone into her clutch and turned toward the side hallway, but Harrison was already walking. Caleb followed. Mara did too, small red shoes clicking behind them until the music of the gala faded into the dull hum of service corridors. The farther they went from the ballroom, the less the hotel pretended. Gold wallpaper gave way to beige paint. Lilies gave way to bleach. At the staff elevator, a tired housekeeper held a stack of towels against her chest and looked at Mara with sudden recognition, then quickly looked away. Downstairs, the laundry room breathed heat. Industrial dryers spun behind glass doors. White sheets tumbled like ghosts. Under the fluorescent lights, Tiana Brooks stood at a folding table, smoothing napkins for the same donors who had just debated whether her daughter was confused. She froze when she saw Harrison. Not because he was famous, but because Diane was behind him. "I didn't send her up there," Tiana said at once, her voice low and careful. "Please don't take my shift." Mara stepped in front of her mother, not dramatically, just enough to be seen. "Mama, they changed the case." Tiana's face emptied. Diane sighed gently from the doorway. "Mrs. Brooks, no one is blaming you. We simply need to clarify that you requested a pause in services." Tiana stared at her. "I never requested anything." "You may not remember the exact wording," Diane said. "These forms can be stressful." The dryers kept turning. Somewhere in the corner, a small breakroom television played a late local news segment with the sound off, blue light flickering over vending machines and paper cups. Harrison waited, silent longer than politeness allowed. Mara reached into the front pocket of her dress and pulled out an old Android phone with a cracked screen and a strip of red tape around the back. She held it with both hands. "Mama said not to play it unless somebody called us liars." Tiana closed her eyes. "Mara." "They did," Mara whispered. She tapped the screen. Took 3 tries before the phone responded. Then a voicemail began, thin and scratchy beneath the thunder of dryers. A woman's voice, calm enough to sound kind, filled the laundry room. "Mrs. Brooks, this is a reminder from family relations. Families who cooperate stay visible. Families who create unnecessary review concerns may be removed from donor-facing support materials. We would hate for Mara's picture to come down before your assistance is complete." The message ended with a soft click. No one spoke. Harrison looked at the phone, then at Diane, then back at the phone. His mind returned, unwillingly, to Eleanor standing in their kitchen years ago, refusing to let a photographer use a crying child in a campaign brochure. "Don't make pain perform for money, Harry," she had said. He had loved her for saying it. He had built a fund in her name and trusted Diane to protect that line. Caleb took the phone carefully and checked the timestamp. 2:13 a.m., he said. From the Hope Bridge Family Relations Extension. Diane's face did not break. That was what chilled Harrison most. She only inhaled, composed herself and said, "A staff member used poor phrasing." Mara looked up. "It was your voice." Harrison finally turned fully toward Diane, and for the first time that night, he did not look confused. He looked betrayed. Harrison did not answer Diane. He looked at her long enough for the laundry room to feel smaller, then turned away as if the matter had become too ordinary to deserve a scene. That was the first thing Diane missed. She expected anger, a raised voice, a public threat she could label emotional and reckless. Instead, Harrison took the old phone from Caleb, held it for one more second, and gave it back to Mara with both hands. "Keep this with you," he said. Mara searched his face. "You won't delete it?" "No," he said, "and no one else will touch it without your mother's permission." The dryers kept rolling behind them, steady and heavy, and for a moment the only sound was the soft metallic clink of Tiana placing a clean spoon beside a chipped mug of break-room tea. Mara looked at the mug, then at Harrison. "We don't need fancy help," she said quietly. "We just need them to stop saying Mama got something she didn't get." Harrison nodded once, as if she had given him instructions more serious than any board directive he had ever signed. Diane folded her arms, recovering her calm. "Mr. Whitaker, I can prepare a complete case. Review tomorrow morning. Tonight is not the appropriate setting." "Of course," Harrison said. "Tomorrow." His voice was so even that Diane relaxed by half an inch. He turned to Caleb. "Would you walk Mrs. Brooks and her daughter to the employee lounge? Somewhere quiet. Somewhere with cameras." Caleb understood the second sentence better than the first. Diane did not. Upstairs, the rain had begun striking the tall glass panels outside the private donor conference room, turning the city lights into trembling streaks. Harrison stood alone at the end of the mahogany table and opened the secure donor dashboard on his phone. He did not call police. He did not call reporters. He called his chief compliance officer, a woman named Nora Bell, who had once found a $6 discrepancy in a 9-figure acquisition and lost sleep over it. "Nora," he said, "pull every Hope Bridge file tied to the Eleanor Emergency Housing Fund. Start with HB 4179. I want timestamps, user access, vendor disbursement, and image release status." Quietly, he ended the call before she could ask why. When the first file appeared on his tablet, the room seemed to cool. Tiana Brooks was marked resolved. Beneath that, another line read public display approved. Harrison stared at the words. Resolved meant the family had been helped. Public display approved meant their photograph could still be used for donor-facing materials. Both could not be morally true at the same time. Then the vendor line loaded. Vale Community Housing Partners. Harrison's finger stopped above the screen. Patricia Vale's company. The next file carried the same pattern. Then another. Then another. 47 cases, all quiet, all polished, all buried beneath language gentle enough to pass for mercy. On the far wall hung a framed photograph of Eleanor at the first Hope Bridge opening, smiling beside Diane Winslow. Harrison had always thought Diane stood beside his wife because she believed in the mission. Now, for the first time, he wondered if she had simply been standing close enough to learn how to wear Eleanor's goodness like a borrowed coat. The first file was still loading when Harrison set the tablet face down on the conference table. He did it slowly, almost gently, and the small sound of glass touching mahogany made everyone in the room look at his hand. Diane had returned from the hallway with her expression repaired, Patricia beside her in a silver shawl, both women carrying the same polished concern they had worn upstairs. Caleb stood near the door. Mara sat beside her mother with the old phone in her lap, both thumbs resting along the cracked edges, as if the little device were something alive she had promised to protect. On the table sat a glass of ice water no one had touched. The cubes had begun to melt, clicking softly against one another. Harrison looked at Diane and said, "I need your help with something simple." That was all. "No aquiesaschen. Nos charpnis." Diane nodded, careful but confident. "Of course." Harrison turned the tablet around. The The screen showed HB 4179 with the name hidden, the way a donor report might protect a family's privacy. This case shows resolved, beneficiary confirmation received, and public display approved. Explain the order to me. Diane glanced at the screen, then at Patricia. Resolved means assistance was completed. Confirmation means the family acknowledged services. Public display approval means they consented to remain in campaign materials. So the family agreed? That is what the record indicates. Mara looked down at the phone, then up again. She did not interrupt. Harrison waited. The file bar in the corner crawled from 87 to 92%. Rain whispered against the dark window. From somewhere beyond the wall, the gala microphone gave a low feedback hum, then went quiet. Harrison asked, "And if a family withdrew?" Diane folded her hands. "Then we would remove them from donor-facing displays. Immediately, as soon as administratively possible." Mara's eyes moved to the needs help wall visible through the half-open conference door. Her picture was still there, still lit, still smiling with a caption asking strangers to save her. "But you changed us to withdrawn," she said softly. "And you didn't take us down." Diane's gaze landed on her for one cold second. "Mara, that is not for you to interpret. It's my face," Mara said. The room stopped. Harrison did not look away from Diane. "She's right." Patricia shifted first. Her hand paused on the door handle, fingers resting around the brass, as if she had meant to leave, but no longer knew whether leaving would look worse than staying. Caleb's phone buzzed once. He did not touch it. The file finished loading. Harrison tapped it open and turned it toward Diane again. "One more simple thing. Read the timestamp aloud." Diane saw it then. Not the whole trap, but the edge of it. Her lips parted. The confirmation had been created at 11:48 p.m. from the executive office terminal. "That could be a batch update," she said. Harrison nodded as though considering it. "Maybe." He looked at Mara. "What time did your mother get home that night?" Mara did not hesitate. "After midnight." Her shoes were wet. The porch light camera was blinking because the landlord never fixed it, but our neighbor's baby was crying. "I remember because Mama gave me cereal for dinner at 12:16. It was the kind of detail no adult would invent because no adult would think it mattered. Caleb finally turned his phone around. Nora Bell had sent the access log. The executive terminal belonged to Diane Winslow. Diane stared at the screen, and for the first time, her calm did not return quickly enough. Mara held the old phone tighter, and Diane understood, with a slow change in her eyes, that the little girl in the red dress was no longer standing in the ballroom alone. Diane's silence lasted only 2 seconds, but in a room built on polished explanations, 2 seconds was enough to feel like a confession. Then she recovered. "Access logs do not prove intent," she said, each word placed carefully, like china set on a shelf. "Mr. Whitaker, if you take this into the ballroom without a complete audit, you risk harming the very families Eleanor wanted to protect." Harrison looked at her, and for a moment Diane seemed to believe the name would still work. Eleanor, the one word that had always made him pause. The one memory people used when they wanted his money, his silence, or his trust. But this time Mara stood up. She did not look at Diane. She looked at Harrison. "There's one more thing," she said. Tiana reached for her daughter's hand, not stopping her, only steadying her. Mara opened the cracked phone again, scrolled past the saved voicemail, and tapped a folder named Mama Work. "I took pictures because Mama said grown-ups believe paper more than kids." The phone was old, slow, and the file opened in pieces, first black, then gray, then a shaky photograph of a small kitchen table under a yellow bulb. A white envelope lay beside a bowl of cereal. On the envelope was Hopebridge's logo. Inside it, Mara had photographed $300 in cash and a note typed in clean black letters. "For inconvenience. Please do not attend the gala." Harrison stared at the note. His breath changed, barely, but everyone heard the stillness after it. Caleb leaned in, photographed the screen, then asked softly, "Mara, do you still have the envelope?" Mara nodded and pulled it from the lining of her little red dress. where Tiana had sewn an extra pocket so she would not lose things on the bus. The envelope was flattened now, but intact. Caleb opened it with a napkin around his fingers. The note was still there. So were the bills. Patricia made her first real mistake then. That was a courtesy stipend, she said too quickly. For transportation hardship. Harrison turned his head toward her. You knew about it? Patricia's mouth closed. Diane looked at her with a flash of fury so quick it almost seemed like fear. Caleb's phone buzzed again. This time Harrison nodded for him to read it. Caleb's voice was quiet. Nora found the transfer trail. 48 emergency housing disbursements routed to Vail Community Housing Partners. Same approval chain. Same confirmation language. Same display status. He paused. Total is $962,000. The number did not explode in the room. It sank. It landed in the carpet, in the walls, in Harrison's chest. Nearly $1 million had moved under his wife's name, while mothers folded laundry downstairs and children smiled from a wall upstairs. Still waiting. Then Nora sent the final file. Caleb opened it on the conference screen. It was security footage from Hope Bridge's executive office, timestamped 11:46 p.m., 2 minutes before Tiana Brooks's confirmation was created. Diane Winslow sat at the terminal. Patricia Vail stood behind her, one hand on the back of Diane's chair, reading from a folder. Diane typed. Patricia pointed. The screen glow lit both their faces with pale blue calm. At 11:48, Diane clicked submit. Beneficiary confirmation received. Harrison watched without blinking. When the clip ended, his face had gone white. He could not speak. Not at first. He saw Eleanor's photograph on the wall behind them. The same photograph from the first Hope Bridge opening, smiling over the shoulders of the women who had learned how to turn her compassion into cover. Mara lowered the phone to her chest. Mama was at work that night, she said. She wasn't on their computer. Harrison closed his eyes once, as if the sentence had struck something deeper than anger. When he opened them, he picked up the envelope, set it beside the receipt, and placed Eleanor's fund report on top like a judge laying down a verdict. His voice, when it came, was almost gentle. Caleb, preserve the servers. Lock every account. Then call the state attorney general. The state attorney general's office arrived before midnight, not with sirens, not with television cameras, but with quiet badges, sealed evidence bags, and the kind of calm that made powerful people lower their voices. Diane Winslow was escorted out through the service corridor she had used to keep mothers like Tiana invisible. Patricia Vail tried to call 3 board members before her phone was taken as part of the investigation. By morning, Hope Bridge's accounts were frozen. Vail Community Housing Partners had been suspended from every contract tied to the fund, and Harrison Whitaker stood before the emergency board without a speechwriter, without champagne, without the protective fog of ceremony. He placed Mara's receipt, the cash envelope, the access logs, and the printed transfer trail on the table one by one. No one interrupted him. Some board members looked ashamed. Some looked afraid. Harrison did not care which was which anymore. We used their faces, he said quietly, and ignored their voices. Diane was terminated before noon and later faced charges connected to fraud, falsified confirmations, and misuse of charitable funds. Patricia resigned from every nonprofit board that had once treated her name like a guarantee. Her company was sued for restitution, and the first money recovered did not go toward a public relations campaign. It went into an independent trust monitored by outside auditors, legal advocates, and 3 community members who had once been listed as cases instead of people. Tiana Brooks was not asked to smile for a camera. She was given a lawyer, back rent protection, a written guarantee that her hotel job would not be touched, and a real apartment lease in a safe building 12 minutes from Mara's school. The first night there, the kitchen light stayed on because Mara asked if it could. She said she liked seeing that a room was still there when she woke up. Harrison came by a week later, not with photographers, but with Caleb and a folder of documents Tiana had already reviewed with her lawyer. The needs help wall was gone. In its place, Hope Bridge installed a plain board that listed every dollar received, every dollar spent, and every family policy approved by the new community council. Tiana's name was on that council, not as a symbol, but as a vote. Harrison had insisted on that, then corrected himself when Mara asked whether insisting was different from listening. After that, he asked more questions. He sat in folding chairs under fluorescent lights. He heard from mothers who worked double shifts, grandmothers raising children on fixed checks, fathers who had filled out forms no one answered. He learned that charity could be another locked door if the people holding the keys never had to stand outside it. Mara kept the old cracked phone. Caleb offered to replace it, but she shook her head and said, "This one remembered when people didn't." On a quiet Friday evening, Harrison visited the Brooks apartment with a framed copy of the receipt. Not the original. That belonged in evidence. This copy had one red stamp, one case number, and a small brass plate beneath it that read, "Follow the receipt." Tiana set out cornbread, chicken soup, and 3 glasses of milk on the small kitchen table. No chandeliers, no speeches, no wall of faces asking strangers to feel generous. Just a warm room, a repaired red dress hanging over the back of a chair, and a child finally eating dinner without guarding a secret in her pocket. Harrison looked at the receipt, then at Mara. "What should we do with it?" he asked. Mara slid the glass of milk toward her mother first, then answered, "Put it where grown-ups can't pretend they didn't see." Harrison could not speak for a moment, and in that silence, the truth stood taller than power, because the little girl everyone had tried to shrink had finally been heard.